More intense than the friendly, but not as meaningful as a league game. United's first competitive game of the 26-27 was a success and sees us progress in the Carabao after a chaotic 8-minute spell, which involved 3 goals. But what did we learn from Saturday? Are we content? Are we worried? And are we season ready? Hello and welcome to Under the Abbey Stand, the first of many pods this week for you lucky people. My name is Jordan Warland, and keeping me company this warm summer Sunday evening is a man who cannot be tempted away from the NRE at any cost. It's Jack Swindlehurst. Hello, mate.
Hi, mate. Nice to see / hear you again. And yeah, I will join you, of course, for a main stand day at some time this year. I think I'll wait for one of the for the colder evenings so I can sit and snuggle up to you and have a bovril when we're freezing on a cold Tuesday night in December.
So the joke there, of course, is I convinced Tom to come to the main stand on Saturday and watch the Carabao from the luxury of the B block. But the joke was on me, Swindle, because I missed not 1 but 2 goals. Sat with him having a beer during half time and not wanting to rush back. I mean, first half kind of didn't give the impression that we needed to rush back. So yeah, I guess start as we mean to go on this season. That's a good start.
Yeah, I mean he will do that, and we've all fallen foul of the Cambridge United curse of kind of scoring or conceding just after half time, and lo and behold, it all happened in a big flurry. But yeah, there was plenty positive to take, and I can fill you in on what happened for the goals that you missed. So yeah, don't worry.
I have watched the highlights. I got a and also a very detailed review of each goal from a gentleman that was sat behind us, who at the end of the game said, "I really like the pod." So thank you to him. He didn't give me his name, but thank you. That definitely helps. It is obviously the conclusion of pre-season. I quite like having the Carabao as that first Saturday. I like that sort of structure. It kind of sort of feels a bit more meaningful and gets us going. But it is obviously the conclusion of pre-season, and we'll talk about how ready we are. But Swindle, for the people listening, probably time to come clean about how ready you are for the season and the fact that you don't have a working microphone.
Yeah,
you sound okay to me. You sound okay to me, but sometimes in the record it all comes out in the wash and it's not great. So if Swindle's sounding worse than normal, which is some stretch anyway, that is right. That is why. And but we're fixing it. We have a spare microphone, and you're going to have it for Tuesday. It's a big record on Tuesday, isn't there?
Yeah, I think Tuesday's the big one. Season preview, looking ahead, loads of hot takes and predictions to come in that one. So I really feel like going to need a mic for that one. I think I must just have podded so hard last season that the mic has failed to work. But yeah, no. Sorry if anyone does pick up on any of that, but yeah, we'll be all sorted for Tuesday and Thursday. It's going to be a big pod week and a big week of Swindle on the pod.
I don't know what that Thursday one is, but of course Friday we'll have a preview pod out about Wigan. Hey, he's not ready. He's not ready for the season, folks. What are the questions we've got to think about ahead of Tuesday? It's points against Borough.
Yeah.
Top goal scorer, player of the season,
and then hot takes. Yeah.
So there you go, everyone listening. Those will be the topics there or thereabouts. Have a little think ahead of that proper in-depth season preview dropping on Wednesday morning. Swindle, I'm not going to be on that one, so I'm just going to say it here. 6 points against Borough. I'm really, really bullish about that one.
I love that. We need that energy going into this season, I think. And as we've said, and we'll go on to, I think, as you said, the Carabao being on a Saturday afternoon to start the season is actually quite a kind of nice way to ease into it. It felt like that halfway house, kind of a little bit kind of chilled and pre-seasony, but then there's something to play for, and we saw it picked up in the second half, and there was a bit of needle to the game. So really nice way to start the season.
Some very weird handbags where Kel Watts and their player sort of held on to the back and the bottom of each of their shirts, pulling it down. I've never seen that kind of coming together before, so that was interesting.
Yeah, it was like the kind of slow dancing you'd do at the disco at school. I don't really know what happened at all. Really, they just seemed to keep a hold of each other, and then everyone else got involved. But yeah, it was nice to see a bit of energy injected into the game and a bit of needles. So yeah, a good way to start the season and not 3 points, but a win and through to the next round.
3 points in a cup sense, I guess. Yeah. Although Neil Harris afterwards did say probably not going to win this trophy, which kind of, burst my bubble slightly, but we'll
Mm.
move on. We'll move on. What I like to do when it's the first visit of the new season to the Abbey, so this, which is what Saturday was for me because I didn't go to the Northampton pre-season game. I hear I didn't miss much, but yeah, first visit for the year on Saturday for me. What I like to do, Swindle, because I'm a bit sad, is have a look around and see if there's any new advertising boards. And I'm pretty sure this is a new one. Apologies if it was there last year and I just didn't notice. But we're talking about the Carabao, sponsors of the Carabao Cup.
Yeah.
There was two Carabao Lager advertising boards, and I just want to get your opinions on a Carabao Lager because that to me sounds intense.
I mean, if they're going to start giving away free crates of that, then suddenly I'm going to start engaging with their content on X a lot more. I bet that is luminous in color and disgusting to taste, but I'm going to try and get my hands on a can and give it a go.
It just strikes me as being basically like a Jaeger bomb, but in pint form.
Yeah, like a long Jaeger bomb.
If anyone over the course of the season sees the Carabao Lager on tap anywhere in Cambridge, please do reach out because we'd like to frequent there and give it a try. A friend of mine was able to find it in a bottle based on the conversation we had on Saturday evening about it. So he's not tried it yet, so I can't let you know if he's still alive or not. But I'll keep you posted. Yeah, Saturday then. First trip up to the Abbey for the year for me. First try of the new fried chicken in the main stand was a delight. Nice to see the new home kit looking good. But how about Saturday for you, Swindle? But more about football and not just those little sort of frilly things that I mentioned there. But let's have a mindset check to start the pod. How did Saturday and what you saw or what you didn't see, how's that impacted your mindset ahead of the new season? Has it done anything for your positivity, either good or bad? Where are you?
I think it's kind of left me feeling like where we kind of are where we are. I think we're maybe a little bit short on personnel, but we've carried through from last season that kind of dogged ability to win games, in a tricky manner. And I think we were talking a lot in the first half. The kind of style of football lends itself to kind of being like little fits and starts of quality, and then managing games quite well. And it could be quite a long season from that point of view. And I think Cambridge United will grind a lot of results out. But I think there's some players in there who look to have really improved from last season. And then seeing the new people have come in who are doing brilliantly as well is a really nice thing to see. So I think generally relatively positive. I think League One is going to be really, really difficult this year. I think there's some quality teams in there. I think there's a lot of money flying about at this level and above, and you see things like that Boreham Wood player. They're bidding 3 million for him. I think it must be a very hard thing for Neil Harris and a team like of our size in this league with our budget compared to others. So I think we recruited shrewdly, and with the exception of obviously Stead. A bit long-term injury, but I had me. Hopefully, we'll go on to later in the pod. Should be back, but I think we're looking good. But I really would hope in the next week that one or two more come through the door. I think we still need a couple of others to make this squad competitive in League One.
Yeah, we've got a few questions about squad numbers and possible signings, which I think is only natural given what we saw on Saturday, what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. I'm sure we'll cover it in the season preview in more depth as well, but we'll definitely touch on it today. But yeah, one of my takeaways naturally from Saturday was, I think we're short here and here, or I'd like to see a face here and here. But on a more positive note from Saturday, I thought the two debutants, Perry and Heath, had terrific games. Really liked the look of them. Heath in particular grew into the game. I thought I didn't think we were getting the ball to him anywhere near as much as we should have done for the first sort of opening exchanges in the first half. So a lot of positives there. I also liked how good we were on the break, and we'll
Mm.
touch on this later in the pod, I'm sure. But that strikes me as being something we'll see a lot this year. You mentioned League One's a tougher division, and we're going to be up against it. And I think our ability to be able to withstand teams and then hit on the break is going to be where our success will sort of yeah will be an indicator of how well we do this season. That will be the main factor there. So yeah, some good bits there. Definitely some negative bits as well. I thought it was quite a close game, perhaps a little bit too close for me. Perhaps a couple of defensive errors or personnel errors, which doing the season I think I'll be a little bit more worried about. But it does sort of maybe feel a little bit better that it was still kind of that pre-season mentality. So last sort of chance to sort of to get that out of the system. Neil Harris after the game was pretty happy. Swindle. He said that this kind of result can build momentum. Pleased to get the win, but the big thing he talked about was coming from behind and winning and showing that mentality. Is that something you're sort of echoing as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think with games like this, it's just about getting over the line. It's about getting it done. The nature of the performance is almost secondary, and I think it actually works really well for teams doing this, putting the League Cup first round on this weekend because friendlies are friendlies and they serve a purpose and you get a run out and they're semi-competitive, but putting something on the line here and making this a competitive game before the season is a really good one. I think it's probably a good exercise for all teams involved, kind of regardless of the result. Obviously, we'll be happy with the two teams, but I think it's a really useful thing, and that's a competitive football match under our belts that could really start our season with some momentum. So I think it's just a really, really positive result. I think it showed good mentality. It was silly to concede the goal that we conceded for a number of reasons, which we'll get to. But to come back from that, within 10 minutes to be leading that game was really, really positive. I think the reaction from all of the players kind of showed, the kind of the mentality that we want them to have going into games like this. So yeah, really positive, and it's a cup game. You just need to get through them. So we're into the next round, and that's got to be seen as a positive.
Yeah, Harris talked about a learning curve, calling out that goal that we conceded. I was going to ask if you agree, but you've already made that clear. Yeah, but what do you think the learning curve is about the goal that we conceded?
Well, don't clear a ball in inverted commas off the line that's going wide would be one piece of advice. That first one I think is gonna go wide. We were behind it, and it looked like the ball was going out for a goal kick. I think we just invited a little bit of pressure and kind of looked tentative. In that kind of final third a little bit. There were a couple of times where we let players have a little bit too much room, and it was so easily avoidable that goal. I think we're going to have to be careful. That's a League Two team doing that to us. In League One, you can't really leave yourselves that exposed. And I think the defense, I think Liam Bennett was really targeted last time we were in League One. Obviously, it's a lot different now, and he's come on as a player. And yesterday, on Saturday, you could see him winning headers and really putting himself about. But I think there is a tendency that he may get targeted again, and I think that's going to be an interesting kind of dynamic and see how he slash the club deal with it. And I think it just kind of highlights, we were so strong defensively last season. That's really what got us promoted. And I think, hopefully that's a bit of a kind of wake up call and can kind of, put us into that first game against Wigan and a bit more responsibility in that defensive kind of area. And Kel Watts had a fine game, but I think, he came on so much last season. It would be fantastic to see him push on and kind of further that improvement, and just make himself more of a kind of, marketable footballer. But yeah, I think we just have to learn these lessons and, remember that, Jake Eastwood kept 20 clean sheets last year. And, if we can do that again, we'll be somewhere near where we need to be. So it's about kind of, yeah, learning from Saturday without dwelling on it too much. But yeah, just trying to get past, goals like that, which are so easily avoidable. And we are guilty of it, have been guilty of it for the past 5 or 10 years. Either starting games slowly or coming out after half time slowly and kind of getting caught occasionally. That has happened on a few occasions. And I think Harris just needs to kind of put a rock at them and say, well done for getting back into it, but let's not draw that pressure on ourselves because, better teams will put us to bed.
Yeah, I think one of my takeaways from Saturday was it felt like we conceded a lot more opportunities and a lot more shots on goal. And whilst I think there's an argument to say, oh, it's last game of pre-season or first competitive game, we're going to grow into season and so on. It did also sort of sit with me that this is a sign of the season to come. Going to be playing teams that are going to have more of the ball in and around our 18-yard box, going to have the quality to open us up more than we experienced last year in League Two. So it felt like learning how to deal with that and learning how to manage that and not, you know, turning the ball over or giving easy opportunities or easy breaks away is something to learn. And it felt like on Saturday that we sort of saw a little bit of a glimpse of what would happen if we did that. Obviously, Barnet are still League Two. They had a terrific end to their season. They didn't quite make it into the playoffs at the end there, but it did feel like a pretty good test to sort of close out the preseason part of. I know it wasn't a preseason game, it was a competitive game, but it still feels like preseason to me. That's why I keep saying it. But it felt like the perfect test because they are a half decent team. They clearly wanted to get a result. Both Neil Harris and Kel Watts after the game were talking about the strength that Barnet have, the pace that Barnet have. Were you happy to see with how well we dealt with quite a strong team that were coming at us?
Yeah, yeah. I want to, remain primarily positive. I think, they we're not gonna face many teams as kind of weak as they are this season. That's just
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
how
no,
the
yeah.
system works. So I think it's really positive, that we've got through. I think it's just about learning from those things, and I think we kind of have to, remind ourselves that we're not just here to make up the numbers. You look back to our last time in League One, and we survived and we kept it, and it's whether the mindset is kind of different going into it this time. Are we looking just to survive again, or are we looking to kind of belong in League One and become a part of it? And it's a lot of it's about mentality, and I think Neil Harris is a fantastic person to have, at the head of the team in that kind of situation. He needs to instill this kind of sense of belonging into the players, I think, because they are there for a reason. We got promoted on merit after having an absolutely fantastic season, but that's like the beginning, really. Now it's about kind of pushing on and making yourselves, part of the furniture in League One. And we don't just want a brief visit. We really want to kind of, make that where we are for a while. So I think there's a lot to be said about mentality, but I think it was just a very positive way to win that game. To come back from 1-0 down, I think, and turn it around so quickly was a really good way to win it. Yeah.
Lots of positives. The experience on Saturday started with a negative, of course, with the lineups being announced and a very obvious gap in there. Noah Hadmay in the match day squad. We find out afterwards in the interviews that were done that he's got an injury in the sort of the hip groin area, but they think it's only going to be a couple of weeks or a few weeks that he will be out. Give me your thoughts on this one, Swindle. How did you feel at the time when there was no Hadme in that lineup? What was your instant thought there? Did you think it was going to be really bad news? Are you feeling a little bit better that they're saying it's just a few weeks, or are you of the mindset that it kind of doesn't really matter? It's just we've signed an injury-prone striker, and he's not going to be fit for the first competitive games of the season.
It's actually a bit of the first one, really, because we'd all convinced ourselves that this was like a kind of a horrendous injury or like a really long injury, and I think we were all like, "This is it now." We're completely stuffed.
You expect
So
the worst, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I did, and like these things do happen. Athletes, who are at the top of their game, are more susceptible to injuries like that. That's just how it works, and I think if Harris will be cautious with it. He won't want to rush him back, and hopefully it's just a couple of weeks. Whilst it's frustrating, obviously going into a season, especially with what's happened to Stead and you know having Lavery there, who's always a risk, it does happen. So I think not dwelling on it too much, kind of making the best of it whilst we haven't got him, and then utilising him when we have is definitely the way to go about it. Incidentally, I think Apare actually put himself about really well yesterday. I think there was quite a lot of positives to his game, and maybe a few things that he wasn't doing last season. So I think he's probably spent quite a lot of time working, in the background over the summer on kind of his positioning and how he uses the ball and how he distributes it. And it was definitely a more positive performance from Apare than some we'd seen. So yeah, that was a really good kind of thing to see. And yeah, he will do a job for the time being for sure, and will be an important part of our season one way or another this season.
Yeah, I'm glad you called out Apre there because I think, like yourself, he had a good performance on Saturday. My enduring memory of the first half was just how much running Apre was doing, a lot of it for very lost causes, hopeless balls over the top, no one around him, and so on. And then second half, which we'll talk about in more detail in a second, but when we got going, with the three behind him, his movement, his involvement, with those three being quick to get around him, worked really well. So yeah, definitely agree that the Apre deserves some plaudits from Saturday. Back to the Ahadme injury though. Do you think that perhaps this is, I know this is going to be a cliche to say this, but it's a good time for someone to get injured because the window is still open. There is still an opportunity to go out there and address it. This is an area that quite a while ago in preseason, Harris said words along the lines of, I think we're done in this position. So on that topic and on the question we've had from Daniel, and thank you everyone who has messaged in with your questions at AbbeyStanPod on X, of course. Daniel asks, are we really going into a League One season with only Apre as our fit striker who can play more than 30 minutes? So do you think we're going to see some movement in the striking department, Swindle? Do you think this news has maybe turned the dial a little bit on an area that they had considered done? Or do you think they'll just wait it out?
I hope they don't. I think hopefully this will kind of wake something up. But equally, the conversation around strikers and kind of availability, it's a kind of almost a bit of a dying position. There's less strikers about, there's less strikers available. And I think Harris won't just want to kind of get someone through the door. It'll need to be the right profile of player. And if there are conversations that are kind of ongoing now, then that's great. But he won't rush into anything. So he clearly backs the players we've got. But I think some more, another option would be really, really useful. I kind of hope, that's one of two that maybe comes in. But you have to kind of trust Neil Harris. We've put a lot of faith into him. He's kind of won a lot of faith back as well, especially after, the first chapter of his Cambridge United tenure as manager. But yeah, I think we kind of have to hope that someone else will come in, and it's so hard to tell. But it would be sod's law, wouldn't it, to see Lavery kind of hobble off or Apare pick up an injury and then really be stuffed. And obviously don't want to tempt fate, touch wood. But yeah, I think hopefully there are now conversations going on around looking for another option to bring in there.
Neil Harris named two goalkeepers on the bench on Saturday, Swindle. Do you think that was a bit of a statement from him? Do you think that was a bit of him not throwing his toys out the pram, but him sort of trying to make a point to get some more momentum going on the transfer front, or do you not think that's the case?
Yeah, there was a lot of conversations around it, in the pub before the game and in the bar at the NRE, kind of people being like, yeah, knowing Neil Harris and seeing how he carries himself and how he's, composed himself in interviews and just generally on the sideline, I definitely think, that's a bit of a kind of nod towards, this is what we're dealing with, lads, coming up a bit more. So yeah, I think 100%. But I don't think there's anything too deep to it. I think it probably is just a bit of that, and I'm sure there's 90% of football managers across the football league are probably in the same position where they feel like they would love to have more resources than they do. But that's part of being a manager. You've got to get the best out of what you've got. But saying that, I really hope we sign someone else. I don't have to field two goalkeepers on the bench ever again.
Well, Josh has asked how many more signings are needed and in what position. So I'm sure we'll get Julian and Tom's take on this in the season preview coming out this week. But what's your take on that? Numbers wise, where are you thinking we need reinforcements?
A striker, a midfielder, kind of central midfielder. I mean, that number 8 position is available, isn't it? And I think that people are saying that there's a player in the middle of the park that we could really do. We need to kind of, I think we need to act quite early on what is the best combination of central midfielders and how we're going to play that, and there's all this conversation rumbled on all last season, and there's a million different ones about Pelly and how people rate him and the combination of him and Don Ball together, and now McLaughlin's back, but like I think another kind of ball player in there, a bit more dynamic would actually be really positive. I think I was going to bring this point up earlier. Saturday's game, I think we really going to need to nail that position down, because I think the ball was a little slow to make it from defence through to attack, and I think that's the jobs of kind of those central players, and I think they're going to really need to take it by the scruff of the neck, because League Two they were really effective and dominant, but it's going to be a different kind of game. It's a really, really difficult league, League One, and they're going to need to step up regardless of who makes the position theirs. Obviously, Don Ball, club captain, it seems like, we're going to go that way. But we really need to, take ownership of that. And that's going to be such an important part of the field for us that we really do need to kind of get that. So bringing in another option for that would be great. Um, and I don't know if I'm just being greedy now here, like, another kind of wing back would be great, just as another option, I think.
Well, I was going to say, I think you can answer the question of, how many people do we need to bring in what positions? You can either say, look at it from a starter's perspective, and I think you're
Yeah.
right. I think sort of central midfield or someone behind a striker is like a starting role. But I was thinking on Saturday, what cover is there sort of on the right hand side, right back, centre back, and so on. So I would say if you're looking at sort of the squad as a whole, I'd like to see like a full back or maybe, like you say, someone that could play full back, wing back,
Yeah.
and could be on the right, in case Bennett gets injured. But I think the one for me on Saturday, when I saw the lineup, I saw McConnell was starting. And I think we had a couple of questions about this, about whether McConnell is good enough to be a starter in League One. Really emphasised to me, with that Stead injury, we're maybe, well, not maybe, we are definitely, in my opinion, light in those sort of behind the striker positions. You've got Ben Knight, obviously, who can play central and wide, but maybe another sort of person in that mould. Usually that's kind of an area that maybe you could pick up a loan from a champ or a prem team, sort of a younger player as well. So that's kind of the area I was thinking of. Although McConnell on Saturday, how would you rate his performance? He seemed to be involved in a lot and got better, but was a little bit wasteful maybe early on.
I think he was quite good, to be honest. I think he put a shift in. I think it was all a little bit disjointed in that first half. It was like they kind of, no one was really quite on the same wavelength. There was kind of nice intent, and then it just wasn't quite working. Whereas they certainly gelled a bit more second half. But I think actually he put himself about. I think he linked up with Apre quite well. I think he's looking keen. He's looking quite physical. I think it's a massive season for Glenn McConnell because I think he's at the point in his career now where if this goes well, it could really kind of propel him. And if not, it could be a kind of, loan out in January and then, maybe moving on. And it might sound like quite extreme given that he's played a lot, but like, I imagine he could drop out of favour if he doesn't kind of push on. So I think you're right. I think it's a lot of pressure on young shoulders, but I think if he does get that chance and can take it in the first few games and make his mark on League One, I think it could be a massive season for him. So I was pretty happy with what I saw. I think there was wasteful uh, passages of play from quite a lot of the team, So I think that's just kind of early season stuff, and we'll let that slide. But there's no question about his kind of commitment, and I think the ability is there too. So hopefully, we can kind of marry all that together and make a real impact for the youth. But I do agree that I think that position we could do with somebody else, to come in and not just for cover, but to challenge for that position, really.
So Saturday, then we lined up with a back four. Had a lot of questions about this, Swindle. The ones that I'm looking at right now come from Dan and came from Anton. So yeah, questions around starting the season with a back four, or should we switch to the back 3/5? What was your take on the back four on Saturday? And would you consider changing it for the rest of the season and week and onwards?
It'll be interesting to see what Neil Harris does. He does chop and change a little bit, and I wonder if there might be a bit more kind of tactics to how that is set up this year, this season. Like, I wonder if for some of the kind of more tricky away days, we might go for that five at the back. But I quite like the four at the back. It kind of made us quite dynamic. I think we were really, I think it made our football more effective on the break, and I think that's a really kind of important thing, especially at a level where we're going to be playing against teams that are equal or better than us. So yeah, actually, I quite liked it, and I'd quite like to see him, go in with that next weekend against Wigan. It'd be nice to kind of start the season with a kind of statement win, and then yeah. But I'd imagine that it might be a kind of mix this season rather than sticking with just four or five at the back. So yeah, I was happy with it, and it works pretty well. I do think we need to kind of take from Saturday that they had a lot of the ball and we let them in a little bit too much, I think, considering it's team from the league below, and we could have managed that game a bit better, I think. So hopefully they can kind of learn from that, and whatever setup, it's about kind of like nullifying teams a little bit more because we were, I think there was just a bit kind of tentative nature to some of the defending yesterday on Saturday. It just kind of invited a bit of pressure, so we kind of need to shake that off pretty quickly because that's going to make for a long season if we do that against teams in League One.
Yeah, that was one of the things I had written down in sort of the match action from the first half. Felt like whilst we probably were the better team or had more of the ball, did feel like we rode our luck a little bit.
Yeah.
There was a good chance early on from a free kick. Eastwood towards the end of the half did a very smart save with his feet. Yeah, sort of allowed quite a few chances. And I guess that's maybe the question of, is the four the solution with, with McLaughlin and Ball dropping deep and
I,
so on.
I don't want to dig anyone out, and I don't want to make things negative at this point in the season. But just as a comment on Saturday's game, I do think McLaughlin didn't have a particularly good game, and maybe was a little bit of the weak link, I think, in the kind of defensive manner. So I think it's probably just something to kind of keep an eye on and work on. And I'm sure, Harris is managing him very well. But I think, just about kind of that's what I was kind of mentioning earlier, making sure we kind of cement that middle of the park and make sure it's kind of the place where we take care of the ball, we join defense and attack, we kind of try and cancel teams out in there and yeah, not to go missing in there because it's such an important part of the field. And I think we were just a little bit slow to kind of start on
Mm.
Saturday, and it showed.
Well, Neil Harris thought we were the better team in the first half. Would you go along with that? Some of the things that Harris was talking about was we were exceptional on the turnovers, good on the break, but we were lacking that ruthlessness. And I think he's got a point with that. I can think of, without even looking at the highlights, at least sort of two or three opportunities for Ben Knight
Yeah.
openings that were really well worked. Apre had a good chance, went straight at the keeper. I think Heath or McConnell, not Nascimento. McConnell had a couple of opportunities as well. So off the top of my head, I can think of at least five, six openings from the first half, but none really, testing the keeper. No top draw saves in the first half.
No, I think that's something that we really need to take from Saturday's game is we need to be a bit more kind of ruthless in front of goal. I think as you alluded to, we did so brilliantly to get into those positions, and then I think it was just a little bit of kind of rustiness almost because the shots were generally kind of directly at the keeper and made for easy saves. And I think you're putting any of them in the corner and we're scoring, and I think a lot of those will be why Neil Harris had us as the better side. I think the build-up play was really nice, but they almost kind of felt like afterwards they kind of felt like half chances really because of how kind of tame the shots were when we were getting them off. So I think it's really important to kind of take the positives from that, but just make sure that the people in those positions are being more ruthless and but actually it kind of contrary to that point, I think Ben Knight especially and Heath kind of showing that willingness to cut inside and run at defenders and getting into that position and having a go and even look to the first goal for United, getting in that position, having a go, and if you do knock on the door enough times, it'll go in, and I think that's exactly the right thing to do. Those two players could be massive for us in that respect this season, I think.
Yeah, and both playing on the break, which is one of the points I sort of mentioned earlier in the pod. I think that's going to be key to our strategy this year. I watched the highlights before we started recording our pod because, as mentioned, missed the first two goals. One of the things that didn't make it into the highlights was the first disallowed goal for Barnet. Um, I guess my question there, Swindle, is the Barnet manager after the game was not very happy. Called out quite a few refereeing decisions. Disallowed goal in the first half. Disallowed goal in the second half. Do you think he had anything in that? Do you think we got a little bit lucky with some of those calls?
I think we rode our luck a little bit. I'm not sure the calls were the problem. He just wasn't happy throughout the game. He was just a very unhappy person. And I think the nature of the second disallowed goal was very funny. Everyone not hearing the whistle.
I
It's just
I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe the one that it carried on. People carried on because like the view that I had from the main stand was very clear. The refs are like blown his
yeah,
whistle,
yeah.
whistle in mouth, hand motioning for the free kick, and it carried on. And then some of the Barnet responses is like, well, the whistle went
Yeah, I did. It's
30,
so
45
odd.
seconds before. Yeah.
But I think it'll always leave you feeling a bit salty when a couple of disallowed goals against a team in a higher league. probably feels like the one that got away. And if you look forward to the draw, and we get a good draw in that, they'll probably be quite kind of salty about that. But we got the job done. That's cup football for you. People ride their luck all the time. It's just about getting through and getting into the next round. And I don't think either were. I think they were both correct decisions. I think the refereeing, in the most part, was actually pretty good yesterday. Generally, from what we've
We're
seen.
um we're recording this before the second round draw is made. That's made Monday evening at 7:20. You did text me something about the second round draw, Swindle. Are we in the south or the northern
We
part?
are in the south, so yeah, teams like Chelsea, Brentford, Fulham, Tottenham, Ipswich, Coventry, all big sides in that one. Obviously, Posh are in there as well. Teams
We
from
were
our league.
worried. We were worried we might be in the north at one point
Yeah,
on
there were
Saturday.
some wicked whispers going around about that, but no, it's yeah. I mean, it's just a tasty one. It'd be fantastic if we got a nice away day again, and people will remember Fulham last year, and that was a brilliant day out for the club, and we really kind of showed what we can do, and yeah, it'd be fantastic to get another one of those, and yeah, see who we can try and upset.
Right, Swindle, talk to me about the opening 3 or 4 minutes of the second half then. Barnet take the lead quite early doors. A couple of opportunities to clear our lines, two clearances off the line itself. Yeah, talk me through the first goal.
Yeah, this was such an annoying way to start the second half. We kind of gone out with had gone into the first half. There was a feeling of neutrality about it all, I think. I don't think anyone was like, oh, this is terrible. I don't think anyone was like, oh, that's been brilliant. It was just kind of like, well, we got through that half. Hopefully we can push on in the second. I think there was a feeling that we definitely had enough to beat them. And I think it was, it felt like it was a matter of time. So to come back and, out for the second half and to start so slowly, and just invite that pressure on immediately, it felt very worrying when that goal went in. I thought there was going to be a bit of a kind of capitulation, and then, another Barnet goal, and then a damp squib of a 2-0 loss to a lead below. I Before the game, I wasn't really putting much weight on whether it was important that we won on Saturday in that League Cup game, particularly. Like, and I think it's always important to win, but I think, thinking of bigger fish to fry, and what our focuses should be. But actually, I think it's a really good way to start a season, and a really good comeback, kind of to instill a bit of positivity in the fan base. So I think, actually, on reflection, I think it's really important that we did, and certainly after going 1-0 down. So I think, yeah, letting them get to, into the box, and pinging that ball across, they should have scored before they inevitably did. Like, either of those chances that were cleared should both have been scored. When you're kind of 6-ish yards out, you should be burying it. So we brought that on ourselves. I don't really want to dig anyone out personally to blame, but I think really as a defensive unit, we need to cut out things like that, because in League One we'll get pumped by better teams. So yeah, I think it's important to kind of learn from it. But then yeah, the response was just brilliant.
Well, yeah, a very quick equaliser back level within a couple of minutes. Again, another good move on the break there. McConnell was involved, a couple others were involved. Nice little cut in from Knight. He'd warned Barnett about that, because I think he
Yeah.
had about 3 or 4 of those, being out on the right hand side, cutting in, getting it on his left foot. Maybe a little bit of luck with the deflection. Nah, definitely a bit of luck.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like I was saying earlier, like if you let Ben Knight do that enough times, he's going to score, and I think that's the
Yeah.
thing. I think like he's so dangerous, he could be so useful for us at this level, and I think it's not just letting Ben Knight do that; it's Ben Knight kind of opening up and playing to his full potential. And I think, yeah, it's just a really brilliant thing to see at this point in the season, that he's kind of ready to hit the ground running, and pick up where he left from last season, really. And I think, yeah, just to get that goal in that game was really important for him, and he deserved it. I think he'd been, one of the shining lights, really, of that first half. So yeah, I think it's brilliant that he did it, and it's such a good response. I think it was really good work. I think Perry really impressed me. For the whole game. And I think, he was involved, as was McConnell, as you said. So I think, yeah, nice to see the kind of some new players coming in and making a contribution as well. And of course, for the second, a very good contribution from one of the new players.
Absolutely. Just one last bit on Ben Knight though. Don't like seeing him in short sleeves. I
No,
know it's
weird.
I know
Yeah,
it's hot.
weird.
I know it's very hot, but Yeah, can't wait for the
Doesn't
summer to be
work.
over for
Yeah,
that to no longer be a thing. Yeah, no, but you're
agreed.
right. You're right. I thought Perry had a great game at left back. Probably, yeah, probably my man of the match, I'd say on Saturday. I enjoyed watching that. Yeah, debut goal from Heath. Only a couple of minutes after the equaliser. Tom and I were back in our seats, so we did see it. Uh, yeah, great goal again. Nice little, well worked goal. I remember at the time thinking McConnell just like absolutely mishit his shot or like spooned it, but actually it was a really great defensive block. And Apre, great work to sort of be first to it, recycle it, get it across the box, and actually, if Heath didn't tap it in, McConnell was there to put it in. So yeah, good goal, I thought.
Yeah, really good. I think props again to Apare just for the awareness to get that ball and to put it in exactly the right position. Nice to see him kind of contributing to the goals there, and yeah, definitely just good awareness for everyone, kind of good intensity, and then yeah, it was nice to see Heath get in there and start his his competitive career with United so well. So I think it's just yeah, a primarily really positive response. I did feel at that point that we were going to kind of I was hoping that we might push on. Get another goal or two to kind of make it comfortable and really see the game out. But it didn't come to fruition, and all, I
And
think we kind of
actually did the opposite, right? The last
yeah
sort of 10 minutes or so
yeah
did that very Easter last season kind of, you know, slink back towards sitting deep and opened ourselves up a couple of opportunities for Barnet.
yeah. I think there's probably a kind of like self-preservation aspect to it a little bit. Like Neil Harris definitely doesn't want to be dealing with any more injury problems, and I think he is probably like, oh, not rotating, but going to give a couple a rest, and then you do that, and it kind of disjoints the team. And Barnet are there, they need to score to stay in the competition, so obviously their intensity goes up. We rode our luck for sure in that last 10-15 minutes 100%, and I think on another day Barnet would have scored at least one and may have put us out. Really couldn't have done with watching penalties. It was absolutely boiling as well, apart from anything else, yes, on Saturday. And I was like in the full sun. I was just dreading if we had to stand there and watch penalties. But yeah, United got over the line. And as we say, it'll just be, a score on a piece of paper or on the internet now that we look back on. I don't think we'll remember this game for incident. It'll just be the fact that we won the first round of the League Cup.
Yes, and the important thing, as Neil Harris said after the game, minutes in players, no
Yeah.
new injuries. So all's well that ends well on Saturday in the first round of the Carabao Cup. We move on to league action. The real deal starts on Saturday. We will be with you on Friday morning, of course, with the Friday pod, looking at Wigan in more detail, hopefully having some signings to talk about,
Mhm.
Swindle, as well as having the fan preview to find out a bit more about Wigan. But before that, we'll have the in-depth UTAS season preview. Always full of gold, always full of great insight and,
Yeah.
big statements like you'll never get promoted with Greg Taylor. But yeah, Swindle, you're going to be on both. You ready for it?
Yeah, absolutely. Ready and raring. I'll also be at the fans forum tomorrow. So yeah, I'll feed back any
Or
nuggets
Monday?
of gold from that.
Yep. Excellent. All right, mate. Well, I think that is a good place to leave it for tonight. Swindle, it's always a pleasure, mate.
Never a chore.
We'll see you again soon. Thank you.